And we're live. So welcome to you, the viewer. Welcome to our fantastic panel. It's the After Dram, and that means it is time to unwind. So put up your feet, grab a cocktail and a whiskey, or a cocktail or two, and relax. So just as a quick recap of our evening, what's gone on so far, Drew, Dawn, Blair, and I have been treated to a tour of Steve Lee's distillery. So we're at Douglas and Oliver, BC, just north of it, I think. We're all sitting in the lounge now, enjoying a much anticipated beverage. Distillery tours are hard work, and we have to indulge ourselves just a little bit. So I'm just going to have a quick picture of what we have here. We are here's the larger picture of where they are. Let's go a little bit closer. You can see where they are in relation to the border. And there's the town where they are. And here's the lounge we're sitting at. We can picture ourselves right there, all four of us. And Don, once he comes in, he can get a chair and sit in the side because he's late. So he could just go on there somewhere in the sky. And what are we doing? We're enjoying some beautiful liquid in the glass. So here's the whiskey. Here's a really good picture of the whiskey. And I'll slide Don in the background as we have this. And then we're going to everybody. So how's that for transition? I'll get my picture off. So everyone, if we could do a quick introduction again. So Steve Lee, who's now porting the orange shirt, we're going to start with you and go straight around the bend from you over to Blair, and then we'll do Drew and then Dawn for the introductions. And your other handles, if we could, please.
Hi, I'm Grant Steveley from the Douglas Distillery. I'm the self-proclaimed Chief Spirits Officer and appreciator of all fine spirits.
Perfect. Thank you, kind sir. Purveyor, maker.
Blair Phillips, co-author of the Definitive Guide to Canadian Distilleries, also known as Inmate 76572 with this orange shirt on. I am enjoying a Negroni made with Steve Lee's noteworthy gin, and I have to say it's pretty fantastic.
Blair, I don't think you're the co-author. I think you're the author. I don't see any other author there with us tonight, so I think you are the author of that book.
Good point.
We'll get that.
Good point.
I think so. You're up.
Hi, I'm Drew Semper. And I'm having a gin and tonic with noteworthy and tonic from Eau Claire's.
Excellent combination. Thank you, sir.
I'm Don, the Whiskey Dive, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and thewhiskeydive.com. And I am also doing Negroni, except for I am using dry fly gin. Wish I had the noteworthy.
And it's not his fault. It's our fault because we couldn't send the samples over the border. I would try, but we could. And I'm Dolph. I'm the president of Alberta Scotch Society. I'm your mediator tonight. I'm the guy we're asking some questions. And I've got two things that I'm enjoying. So I'm double fisting again. So number one is the Negroni. And I'm wondering if you could see that. Steve Lee wrote that himself, I'm guessing. It's nice handwriting, I'll tell you, because mine's horrible. The people that get my samples are not very nice to me about my handwriting. So that's number one, and that's number two. So I'm doing both. And in the glass, they look lovely. And I was told by Blair, our resident expert, that looks okay. So it looks fine. I've got my ice cubes are, what's that game where you shot the things going straight up? Space Invaders. I got my Space Invaders ice cubes, and I've got my Scott, not my Scott, not whiskey, and it's lovely. And I've got it. I'm really happy, and I like how this works out with all the orange on top, and you guys just accent the three guys up top, so we're looking pretty good. I like this, almost Brady Bunchish. So it's all fun. Gentlemen, we're going to start with Steve Lee. A question we didn't have before. So in 2014, Steve Lee, there's an article written from him or about him in a magazine called Country Guide. And the article's called That's the Spirit. So he says two things mostly in here. One, he was hopeful that the craft distilling industry will grow into a destination industry of its own. So one thing that Steve Lee did when he sent the Negroni, he sent this to me right here. And you can't see it, maybe, but it's called the South Okanagan Distillery Trail. Okay? So I'm wondering, was this your idea, Steve?
I don't think it was my idea, but I certainly pushed and coordinated and got everybody on board. This started out as 4 distilleries, and now we have 6 on here. So I was certainly a driving force. And if anybody's worked with distillers, entrepreneurs, it's certainly like herding cats, getting everybody to do this.
I believe that.
It was certainly a challenge, but this is fantastic. It's done well for us.
So you're the driving force. That's good. How handy do you think this book right here would be for people that want to make their own distillery tour in the regions? Do you think?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, when you see that book out, and I don't have one here, and I'm kind of moderately ashamed, but that's because I want a signed book. So getting both authors to sign the book is my next challenge, but we can't wait until we can sell it here at the distillery. Because I have my signed Canadian whiskey book here, which I did normally show to everybody when they come in, because we do sell Canadian whiskey, so I can't wait.
That one right there. Oh, mine's signed too. Don and I stood in line for a half an hour to get ours signed.
I'm not going to go grab my signed one.
No, I'm not either.
I've got
Downstairs.
the original one signed too. I've got edition 1, and then it's back there. It's behind this one right here. Is that's the one. So I've got that signed, and we were sitting there waiting for Davin for a half an hour, and Don and I got better acquainted. Oh, look at that! You did go to get it. Yeah,
I lied.
You didn't want to be left out.
4 copies came out. I might as well.
Yeah. Well, it should. Blair, this is the perfect time for you to tell us about the inception of this book. Why did you and Davin decide to do it? And how long did it take you? Just let's go a couple minutes. I know you've said this a lot. I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
I didn't know.
I would say, let's say around 2014, we got started. We were traveling across Canada just for Whiskey Magazine, doing a bunch of distillery tours, and we realized there was a story to be told within the whole entire country. So that's how it got its genesis. We went to Newfoundland first. There was one distillery at the time, and they closed, but we were there, and it just clicked. And this book, like with all the maps inside the book, I would accent your previous question saying it's a damn handy book for putting together a tour.
A damn handy book. It's the best book ever made.
I think every provincial government, every organization, every travel bureau should really jump on it and buy a ton of copies and get on with it.
Well, they're highlighting BC, the Yukon, the prairies. Ontario is really highlighted, the Maritimes. I'm going to be using the book to get around.
Yeah, I think we talk about every single place. Of course, there are deadlines involved, but up until the late 2019 or so, every place is covered. And we tried to keep a list in the back of the book for places that opened up while we were going from deadline to press. And of course, there's maybe a dozen places since then. But it
might have closed down too, right?
I think on last count, there's now 3 that have closed down.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. And it's a fantastic. I'm a teacher, but I'm a really visual guy, and your book is terribly visual. And I understand it was your buddy in Ontario that did the maps as well, right?
Yeah, a friend of mine from school. We were trying to find a map guy, and I sent out just a general reach out on Facebook and got a bunch of responses. But this guy, Anthony Tremaglia, is an artist, and he decided, I'll do it. Why not?
They do look good, and I told Davin this with his first book because, the second edition of the first book, beautiful maps in there too. I would love to get posters made out of a lot of the pages you guys have in there. So
I would love that too. Of course, there's some legal logistics. We don't really own them anymore, and all that kind of stuff. But that'd be anything.
All right. Thank you, kind sir. Well said. Well said. I'm going to come back to Steve Lee, though, and back to that article, Steve Lee. And here's your quote right there. That's one of them. I want to look back and say I did it. I don't want to say that I could have, but I could have, but didn't have the guts. And here's the second part. There may have been days when I thought it was easier collecting a paycheck, but it'll be worth it all in the end. So I want to know about those really difficult moments, to tell you the truth. It's me crying, but I want to know, like, what days did you say, why did I do this to myself?
Yeah, I think, business is hard. There's no question about it. I even think, this is a manufacturing business where there's a lot of capital investment. I sold my place in Calgary, a bunch of my stuff, moved out here. I didn't know a single person in this community. I moved here purely for the climate, for aging the whiskey. So it was a big leap. And when you do that, you leave your network of friends and family to come to a new place with no connection. It was a tough move, and certainly within the first year, while we were doing the rezoning, just prior to construction, I really doubted whether I'd made the right decision to move to this area. So that was significant, and just as we were getting everything up and running, it kind of reached a pinnacle there too, as well, with all the regulatory bodies, the red tape, the construction, getting everything tied in was on a timeline and a financial crunch. I sleep well at night. I have a whiskey or two every night, and I sleep just fine. But there was a couple of sleepless nights there.
At the beginning, would you say it was more legal problems, more administrative problems, or money problems at first that you were most worried about, or both? I don't know.
Yeah, I think both. Initially when we were getting the equipment going, my background in emergency kind of services didn't play well into coordinating, the guy who installed the boiler, the plumber, the electrician, the installers for the equipment. We had to tie everything in together on a very tight timeline. And we had the regulatory authorities here, WorkSafe BC, the electrical inspector, they all have different goals in mind. Mine is to get up and running, and theirs is, to put roadblocks in the way to ensure that you're doing things appropriately. And I certainly respected that, but you don't always see it from their point of view. So there was some intense pressure there for a short period of time.
All right. Well, we established you had the guts to do it. You're far from done. It's been worth it so far, though, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The Holy Grail is
it's right there in front of us.
That is
right there.
Yeah, we're so fortunate, and I can't say that enough. We're surrounded. I've said it many times. You surround yourself with great people, great things happen, and we've surrounded ourselves with great people, and great things are happening.
I just have to put this up. It's kind of funny because I do these things at night. I look at the pictures. It might be 12, 1 o'clock, and I didn't remember myself, or I saved this as Dubh Glas, a bottle of beautiful. So that was kind of cool. So a bottle of beautiful.
Like I thought that was good. Looks like a port fish. At first, I thought it was a bottle of Abelauer, but it's a port finish. Yeah, dark color.
Perfect. I just have to stop us for a second because Dawn, I didn't ask for your introduction and what's in your glass, and Drew, same thing, introduction, what's in your glass before I keep going. I don't know how I got off. I'm sorry, gentlemen.
You did me.
Yeah, no, you got me as well.
Yeah, you got us.
Because you mentioned how you're gonna, or you couldn't send me the sample, so I had to use someone else. But I changed to an old fashioned.
Never happened.
That's what happens when you pour a triple. Yeah.
All right.
I found out I'm not a Negroni person, so I switched to an old fashioned.
I was thinking that this was a really good cocktail because I'm really limited, Steve Lee. I'm a noob when it comes to cocktails whatsoever. What did you not like, Don?
I have a feeling it's either the vermouth isn't correct, so I might have not grabbed a sweet vermouth, which I'm pretty sure was a key part of your ingredients was sweet.
Okay.
And then it might be a weird interaction with the vermouth, Campari, and dry flies gins specifically.
It's just
Because
not
dry fly it's not a super floral gin.
Oh.
It's also not a super juniper gin, which is something that's always been a turnoff for me. So dry flies gin is a lot like their vodka. It's more vanilla-y and kind of neutral, if that makes any sense.
It's also a tricky cocktail to balance out. I found what the vermouth I had was Cinzano in the fridge, and I think that's what you have too, Dolph, on the bottle.
Yeah.
And now, Steve Lee, is that something that that you use on purpose because it's working really well?
A lot of the cocktails, and certainly with these, an event, something like this, I want to make people to make the same things at home.
You should shake
We
it.
love some other specialty vermouths, but this works really well. And the nice thing, probably for you, Blair, when you mix them together, you probably taste a little bit of separation, tasting all the components for Dolph as well. And I think, Drew, do you have the premix?
Yeah,
he does
as well. So it's had some time to marry and mingle.
Oh, does that
But
make
yeah,
a difference, Steve
it
Lee?
works really well. What's that?
Does that really make a difference the longer it marries together? I know scotches and blends does. I never thought of it this way.
Well, quite often we do actually little barrel aged Negronis, so that's kind of our thing.
Okay. Good.
This one we didn't get into the barrel soon enough, and I went to get to the barrel to give you a sample, but I had drank most of it, so there wasn't.
Good.
I find on this cocktail in particular, when you give it a chance to marry and mingle together, it just kind of is the sum of all its components. It's like a spaghetti sauce or a chili on day one.
Got it.
To a day three, it's always better.
All right. Well, thank you very much, but I don't think it's terribly sweet. When we're talking about the vermouth, this one, well, I don't like sweet whiskeys very much. I like my tart, and this is on that side. I'm enjoying it a lot, actually.
Yeah, so the Campari will bring out some good bitter quality.
Yeah, well, yeah. Maybe that's it. It might be sweet, but taking out the bitter as well. Okay,
yeah, it's just a balanced mixture of fun.
Mixture of fun, of beautiful. Blair, coming back to you with the question. We talked to Steve Lee about something that went completely awry. I want to do the same thing when you're writing the book with Davin, or even individually, or when you're seeing the individual distilleries. Tell me something that was just crazy, that went completely off. And it doesn't have to have a good ending to it either. It's just something.
Well, Steve Lee talks about herding cats, and we experienced a lot of that. But the worst thing was releasing a book on March 31st of this year.
Oh yeah,
that was the horror show. Because bookstores were closed. Most of the distilleries were closed. All the news media shifted to COVID-19 stories. So we came across. There's a delicate balance of coming across as insensitive when you're trying to promote a book with all this horror around you. All the whiskey shows, all the spirit shows were canceled. Online retailers started holding back orders because they decided that they're going to ship out non-essential items first. So some guy in a suit decided that this book wasn't necessarily 100% non-essential. But he changed his tune, and eventually we started to see it coming out on Amazon within like same-day shipping and that kind of thing. But
how did he change his tune? Was Davin like the Godfather sending someone else? Like, you would change your mind there, friend.
There's a reason I'm wearing an orange shirt, and we'll leave it at that.
Good answer. Sorry, Don, you got a question?
Oh, I thought the wall looked plain. Steve Lee, since you brought out the 1 liter barrel, I noticed on one of your YouTube videos, or the videos that you're in, that you started selling your virgin whiskey with 1 liter barrels so that you can do your at-home aging. Have you had anyone come back or reach back out to you and let you know about their kind of like their at-home experiment with your barrel and your whiskey?
Yeah, those home kits, I was really nervous at first about selling those. I experimented with those, and when I had my small still and was doing different experiments just like that, Dolphin. It's they're a lot of fun, but they require a bit of attention.
Yeah.
Yours is nicer though. The 3 bands on both sides. I only got 2.
Yeah.
Oh no, here's the nicer one, Steve.
Is that oak, Dolph?
It is oak. Yeah,
It
and
is
my
oak.
other one is with
That one's a solid bore too.
This one was port in there.
That one's well used. Yeah.
This, although it tastes hideous, my stuff was horrible. I left it in way too long. I left it in, and it should have been maybe 2 weeks. Maybe I had no idea how bad it was. Where it's so
first fill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can overwhelm the spirit. I was nervous about selling these, whether this was a novelty product, whether we were just selling it. I didn't want to sell a novelty product, and I was nervous about this. And I thought I was so smart and so savvy and filled with my spirit, and I knew all these great things. And we started selling these kits, and people started coming back with amazing whiskey in these.
Good.
And I was shocked and really humbled with the creativity that people have done with these barrels.
That's awesome.
And I think it's because I fit within a box, or not a box, on the boundaries. We had people that came in, they put a vanilla bean, they put coffee beans in, they were adding flavors. They took
Shiraz finished.
What's that?
Shiraz wine finished.
Yeah, and people were seasoning these barrels, putting port in it first, putting bourbon in it. I mean, being creative, and I was really humbled at what people did. And it was like, it's almost like we were an art store, and we're selling people a canvas and some paint, and they were coming back. The best part of the job is they were coming back and bringing me samples. We've had people have competitions, and then they bring back the samples so that we can be the judge to see who made the better whiskey.
I would make that an annual thing. I really would. Do like a March Madness type thing. Get 64 people, send a little vial back in, and do brackets.
It's awesome. I mean, we've had the full spectrum. We've had some stuff that has been, a little suspect, but we've had some great stuff. I've been super impressed. I mean, I had a guy who came in. He brought a sample in, and he had it in this barrel for 2 years. And I was shocked. How did you manage to keep a product in this barrel for 2 years and not all of it evaporate away? And he's like, well, I put a damp cloth on it and sponged it every week. And I was, I would never have thought of that. We talked about evaporation loss, and here's the guy moistening the barrel and preventing that evaporation loss, giving the barrel as much TLC as he can.
Interesting.
It was like his baby.
Yeah.
His baby. That was fantastic.
Yeah,
Don, that was a great one.
Yes.
Because when I do those, I rotate them probably quarter turn every week.
That's what I used to do.
And for some of them, once I have a full rotation, I'll do a sample. And then there was one time I forgot my barrel for about 3 months. I just had a lot of stuff going on. And I went down. This is the bottle in the very back of my cabinet up here. It was the most amazing experiment I did. And that was a blend of a couple different cheaper bourbons. But I originally got one of these kits as a Christmas gift from Woodinville's distillery.
Yeah.
And it was a 2-liter barrel. And when I did mine, I did it for exactly how they suggested, and it came out horrible. Then I thought that the barrel was rotting because it starts to change colors. And so I brought it to the local distillery, and I'm like, hey, did I do something wrong with this? And the distiller's like, no, it looks good. Just fill it back up. And he hands me a bottle. I'm like, all right. So I went back to the experiment, but that's when I started seasoning it with Shiraz wine, because I like that dark stone fruits that you get in Shiraz. And I wanted to incorporate that in the bourbon, and great little reaction. But yeah, I've known people who put actually in Dry Fly's distillery, they used to do a little 2-liter barrel on their shelf, and you could see a tea bag hanging out of it, and they were steeping green tea into whatever cocktail they had made. Yeah, it was neat.
Nice. Well, what Don's actually trying to say, and I'm going to interpret for him, so tell me if you're wrong, Don. He wants you to have some type of competition where people actually submit theirs to you after buying your product, and we'll help with judging.
Yeah, I'm in.
Gladly.
Yeah.
I think you guys should come
Was that
in.
right, Don? Am I good?
Yeah, that sounds exactly correct.
Yeah.
Mine was few, so this is a spirit, but look at the color.
No, but it's clear.
And so clear it first and just,
Yeah, very
you know
But
what?
Steve, I will be buying one of your
About the
companies.
experience, right?
Yeah.
You find out how
We
good
sell
or
this.
bad you are at stuff, it's good.
This is something we sell at the distillery. It's unaged whiskey.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how much of the profile from that bottle appears in your whiskey later on?
One thing that's really become apparent with us is that, and certainly on our base spirit, there's a little bit of grain notes, typical, some vanilla and caramel that's there. But we have a distinctive banana note coming from our yeast strain, and that transfers through into our aged spirit. You kind of get a caramelized bananas foster kind of note in a lot of our whiskey. So it
Sounds
definitely comes
amazing.
through.
That sounds amazing.
And if we're gonna judge it, we have to buy one so we know what it tastes like and do it ourselves for a bit there, buddy. We're good.
Of course.
We're
I
gonna.
think Davin should be the judge, and I'll be part of this program.
I think Davin's not here, so he doesn't get to do anything fun.
So Blair is up.
I do it, and Blair is yes, he could be our spirits guide and help us through it, and you and I will do the taste because he's done lots of those types of things.
Yeah.
Steve Lee, so Douglas, or Dubh Glas, if I'm trying to say it the way I thought it was before, is Gaelic from the dark water, and it's pronounced a lot like your middle name, Douglas. Okay, but I think this is all kind of neat how it all fits together. So Dubh Glas, Douglas, middle name. Was this all serendipity, or was this all by design? You were looking for a name over a long period of time.
Yeah, once I knew I wanted to build a distillery after that drunken night in the hot tub, name was certainly important. Branding is certainly important. So I did a lot of research trying to find a name that was going to stand out from the crowd as well. I researched my middle name. My dad's middle name is Douglas. My grandfather's first name is Douglas. His father came from Glasgow. So it just all really seemed to fit. And the property that we were looking at the time, water is a significant part of the production and the process and the final product. And we get our water from a well in the property that is tapped into one of the two aquifers at the bottom of the valley here. And Douglas and dark water and the well, everything just seemed to fit together.
And second question about here, Noteworthy. How did you come up with the name for that? Because that's your first product, right?
Yeah, Noteworthy Gin. We had a number of names for the gin, and Noteworthy clicked for me. An author that I quite enjoy is Seth Godin as well, and he's talked about products in the North American market and being significant and standing out. But they couldn't just be expensive and charging more money. You needed to be noteworthy. And so that we had Noteworthy on the list, and I saw an address by Seth, and that stood out. So I was like, yeah, Noteworthy's in. It's a good fit.
Perfect. And Blair, sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. You're in the big chair now.
Here we go.
I want to know a name of a distillery or of a cocktail from a distillery that you visited that you thought that's freaking brilliant. Just something that came up and you thought that's fantastic.
This distillery names. I agree with what Steve Lee said that when you integrate a story within the name, it really gives it a bit of romance to it. And you see names like Lucid Spirits, Mad Laboratory, Odd Society. In Edmonton, there's Black Diamond Distillery, which was the owners, I should say. He proposed to his wife with a black diamond, and named the distillery Black Diamonds was kind of cool. Patent 5 in Winnipeg. That is, I believe it was the Patent 5 was a patent still for the whiskey still, like a column still to make whiskey. There's Junction 56 in Ontario, Willowball Distillery, Silver Fox, Maison Sivo. They're just, it's an endless list of really cool names out there.
Because, and I haven't read through the whole book. I'm like, you know, from the last book, I just do bit by bit by bit. Do the stories come up within the description in your book as well?
If it's a big part of the story, we will say that. If it's like a little anecdote, it depends on what the story is, because some distilleries you only have a certain amount of space to be able to write a story about them.
Right.
With Douglas, I'm pretty sure we covered. We really talked about making whiskey in that story, so I can't remember if we talked about the name or not, but we did, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
But the name does come out quite a bit if it's a big part of the story for sure.
Nice. Okay, thank you very much, kind sir. Drew, I think you had a question, buddy.
Well, no, it's Nicole has asked, Steely, it's were you excited to be in this book, and why?
Yeah, are you kidding me? If we get published in any book, I'm excited. If anybody wants to talk to me and take a photo and do anything, I was super excited about this book. When Davin came here, when he was coming to town to Oliver about the book and wanted to visit the distillery, I mean, the first thing I did was book him for a whiskey tasting as well. And yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to talk about our distillery, what we're doing, and what the industry is doing, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited right now. I'm excited to be on this.
Woo!
I really just want to point out that passion is so immediately visible that it makes me excited just to finally try your spirit. Like I want to just, like, the second the border opens, I want to drive up and visit you guys. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And don't say that you're going to Alaska and go to the side thing. People are getting charged around.
I mean, fortunately, it's only like $800 US instead of $1,200, but still, I don't want to be charged.
Oh, you can borrow my orange shirt if you get charged.
Yeah. Hey, you hold on to that orange shirt. It's fantastic. I love it. Now, Steve Lee. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. The next question I was going to ask. Are you signing all of the bottles? And you went over the noteworthy one. Is it specific? This is isolation. Is it specific, all the Masonic symbols and stuff on all your whiskey bottles?
Ooh, good question.
Good question. I am a Freemason, so.
All right. Yeah. So am I.
Not a coincidence. Yeah. So yeah, we could certainly talk about that. Only a Mason would recognize those symbols on there. So,
that's what I was going to say. So it's kind of enticing. It's another way to grab people's attention, bring them in. I don't see anything on there, so I have no idea what you're. Well, it's probably down here in the picture, but you know.
Good question. Yeah, certainly. And in answer to your first question, and second question is, I do sign the bottles. So if you would have put, I didn't know that I was going to use. Sometimes I just sign the bottles. If it's requested in the notes section, I will put to Blair on there. What does it say? Yeah, so hand sign. For me, I love signed bottles from. I've got Scotch whiskey bottles signed in glasses. For me, it adds value. I never thought I would be doing it myself, but when somebody is taking the time to support us or order online, I hand sign those bottles. We do it at the distillery. Makes me feel important. I'm excited about it. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I was quite impressed when we opened the bottle and it was all signed.
Drew, my problem was my wife noticed it as I opened it up and I was pouring it, and she says, "Inside, stop!" And it was too late because I had to give everyone else a sample. So you get a signed copy. You have to get two. right? Yeah, one to drink and one to hold on to. So I'm gonna have to
I'll
order another
always
one.
send the bottles.
Yeah.
I need another one of these guys. And you know what? This is the first gin I've ever liked. And you talked about making gin for those who don't typically like gin.
Mhm.
And with the ungin, the engine. Sorry,
No, you can't say it.
I can't. It's the ungin, the non-gin. I liked it a lot, but it was my first one that I've really truly liked. And thank you.
It's noteworthy.
Mhm.
It's noteworthy. It is. All right. Leon, last week we had
Leon.
Yeah.
Steve Lee. Last week I had a conversation with Leon and Jacob, and I was supposed to break from Shelter Point for those of you that didn't watch it last week, and they said I have to bring this up to you. So it's 1:00 in the morning, and apparently Patrick Evans, if it was Patrick, I'm pretty sure it was Patrick because they were coming in and out, and they're laughing the whole time as this is happening.
Yeah, it was Patrick.
Gives you a phone call at 1:00 in the morning saying how much he hates you and how much he loves the gin. So tell us about your perception on the receiving end of that, please.
Well, I hadn't talked to Patrick. I mean, Patrick was through here. Actually, when the cooperage was still in Oliver, I wanted to talk to Patrick. You know, I visited and talked to as many people as I could across the country. Like Stillwater's was one of the first distilleries I went to and talked to Barry, and Barry was fantastic. But Patrick, so I got to know Patrick early on. Took me out for lunch, even when my distillery was just an idea. And I hadn't talked to Patrick on the phone for some time. I would say maybe a year. And he had some choice words for me when he called me up on the phone.
Yeah, it was.
I was like, "Hey, good to talk to you, Patrick." You know, like it was. Yeah, it was fantastic.
And that was it. That's the end of the conversation.
Well,
Sorry, I'm prompting. I'm trying.
Yeah, I know you're trying. Certainly, I don't know if I want to say it on a recorded.
Yes. No, we don't.
He had a choice. He had a choice word for me. He's like, "Hey, Steve Lee, you're a donkey," and I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, you're a donkey," and I was like, "Hey, is this Patrick?" He's like, "Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, you're a donkey. I really like your gin." And so that's kind of the Cole's Notes shortened version of it. And yeah, we talked for 5 minutes, and I didn't talk to Patrick for a couple of months after that. So
He loves your gin, though.
Accepted the compliment with all the rest of it that came with it. That's good.
Yeah, I think the key is with the gin. People ask if Noteworthy's my favorite, and I say, well, at that time, we have a dozen gins sitting on our bar that we enjoy all the time. People come over to visit, and they're like, "You don't just drink Noteworthy?" And I was like, "There's some great gins out there." I mean, Shelter Point's making a great gin.
Yeah,
I like ours better, like Patrick, but we both have good taste. So
he does like yours better, so that's okay. You're allowed to say that. It's fantastic. Steve Lee, another question. So, if you see this quote up here, it says, "Vodka is a soulless liquid that lacks any character or identity." So,
the first book.
You made gin because you need an influx of money, but not vodka. You decided you're not doing vodka. In another YouTube video I found a couple of years ago, I found this beautiful quote. I like it a lot. Have you found a vodka that you can stomach or something that's changed your mind since? And I'll make this big for you. Here you go. Boom.
Yeah, I mean, I think vodka has its place. I truly believe that. Like if you really like orange juice, you don't want to ruin the flavor of orange juice. Like you want it to have alcohol in it. Add some vodka. It's not going to change. It's not going to add, and it's not going to take away from that orange juice. If you want your drink to have some soul and some character, add some gin, add some whiskey, add some rum, add some tequila, add something that's going to add a little bit of dimension to it. However, with that being said, I think vodka certainly has its place. And if you're sipping a vodka neat, you can appreciate the subtleties and nuances that vodka has to offer. But I think if you're dumping that into your cocktail, and it's really difficult to let the vodka shine through in a cocktail. Neat, I can totally appreciate and understand that and those subtleties, nuances, but in a cocktail, it just doesn't do the spirit justice.
All right. Well said. Politically correct answer. Thank you very much. Don, do you have something to add to that, or Drew, either one of you?
Oh, when you're talking about if you found a vodka that you like, I couldn't stand vodka outside of making something that wasn't alcoholic, kind of like what Steve Lee said, until I went to Dry Fly, which is my local distillery. That was the first vodka I ever tasted where it's like, this has dimension to it. It's not just, alcohol. It's not like you're drinking moonshine where it's, a punch in the face, just alcohol. But it was the first time I actually tasted some dimension in it. And it's part of the reason why I described the gin to you guys the way I did, was it tasted like a gin and Dry Fly's vodka had a baby, and that's how their gin came to be. And Dry Fly even does a rested gin, which I prefer more because it's more like whiskey. But that's just my own. I rather whiskey at the end of the day.
All right, Drew, you have one?
I'm not a big vodka person other than using it for a solvent to clean the bottles and glasses before I put whiskey in it. I mean, that's all I personally use vodka for.
But yeah.
But yeah, Yukon Dave's water. He says, so you don't like the Smirnoff flavored vodkas?
Well, something that people have to realize is that Canada had they had a vodka standard that was put in place in 1959, and in June 29th, 2019, they overhauled what could be called vodka now. So it could be any agricultural product. It no longer had to be grain and potatoes and stuff like that. And you didn't have to filter it to death like we've been talking about. And there's tons of vodkas coming out in Canada from these small craft distilleries and micro distilleries that just blow me away. I just have one here that, like, you look at Stillwater's, we were talking about Stillwater's earlier, and they have a single malt vodka, and they don't strip it to death. It's actually quite delicious. And there's Sons of Vancouver, vodka. I also have the dairy distillery in Ontario. They take milk permeate and make a vodka from it, and they put in this little malt, vodka, and this stuff just it changes your perception over it. And whether or not I agree, if you put in a cocktail, it will get buried up a little bit. It does offer some mouthfeel and that kind of thing, but sipping it neat on ice or whatever, it really lets those delicate flavors squeak through.
All right, so that's
definitely
two. I'm thinking I want a third one that we could suggest to Steve Lee that he might want to try.
Do you like shellfish?
I'm vegetarian, actually.
Okay, so I won't. I'll pull this up. There's a Compass Distillery makes a lobster vodka. Now, this sounds really funky, but there's a tradition in mezcal making where they hang a chicken breast in the still and let it cook while they're making the mezcal.
Okay.
So what Compass Distillery did was, because they're from Halifax, they put a lobster in the still, and it just imparts a buttery flavor into the vodka and a bit of that shellfish flavor to it. But that's not if you're a vegetarian.
I would give it a try. I'd totally give it a try.
Oh, we'll try anything. Yeah.
Younghurst Distillery in Toronto is paired up with it's a brand new distillery. They're partnering up with another distillery to open a brand new spot, and they're making a vodka with carrots.
Oh.
And that's why they right in the bunny rabbit. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and it's yeah, and it some of that earthy flavor squeaks through. It's just a lot. I think Canada, because of this new rule, we're seeing a lot of innovation in vodka that we've never seen before, and I no longer dismiss it. After working on this book, like before this book, I was one of those guys that was like, vodka, whatever, I don't care, because you see all these like birthday cake vodkas and chocolate vodka and vanilla vodka and all this stuff in the stores made by these massive places, but when you start to taste some of these serious vodkas that are made by passionate people like Steve Lee, for instance, it's a whole new world.
Yeah, and I think, gin is a flavored vodka in essence. It really is. Like this would be called vodka, but we don't put this through a charcoal filter because it's got flavor. And I didn't want to take out the subtleties and nuances of the flavor. Yeah. I like them. They're good. Let's keep it in, and we don't fit into another category. So I think, hanging a lobster in the still is amazing. And creating flavor and dimension, and that's something that will hold up well in a cocktail. You're not stripping the life out of it, which is amazing. And a lobster vodka, I mean, what would you put a lobster spirit? It doesn't fit into another category.
I'm just picturing a lobster hanging in a still, and it's partially amazing. Bothering me.
Absolutely amazing. I really want to try that now.
Oh, there you go.
Either the vodka or the chicken. Like, it's how drunk does somebody have to be the first time to hey, let's cook my
I'm curious about the history of the mezcal.
Lobster.
Yeah. No, I wonder if back in the day someone decided hey, we have all this heat coming off the still. Why don't we cook off it?
I'm making supper before I go home.
Yeah.
Honey, I'll be home with the chicken. Don't you worry. I'm fine. I'm good. Steve Lee. Let's stick with the gin for a second. So you said you made your gin for those who didn't like gin, and I believe you created something that holds true to what you said you like. So complexity, layers, depth, different flavors, aromas. Tell me, because I saw this and I like the list that you said with the botanicals. Tell us the botanicals used in this gin right there, please.
So I'm looking over to remember the recipe. We use full fresh oranges, coriander seed, lavender, and yellow yarrow flower. That gives us our citrus floral note in our gin, and the coriander seed a little bit of a spice component, which brings into our allspice and cinnamon. We use Ceylon cinnamon. A little bit softer, sweeter cinnamon than you would typically get. It's not cassia, which you would get at the grocery store. We use vanilla beans as a back-end sweetener, so you find a lot of gins use star anise, licorice root, or fennel seeds. We use the vanilla. Wow, is that Davin coming in?
Well, maybe. Well, no, I'm. Let's make you large because I don't want to focus on him. He's late. It's all you, Steve. It's all you.
We use vanilla beans as a sweetener. We don't have a licorice component to our gin. When I was first developing the recipe, I just found not a lot of people like that licorice note. And then juniper berries, of course. We use a lot of juniper berries.
Where are they from? Because that was neat, that question.
Yeah, it's important. We actually use predominantly Bulgarian juniper berries. We've used some from Kosovo. I find they're a little bit of a sweeter flavor profile. They don't have that real pine component that you get in some styles of gin. I don't think it makes it better or worse. I think it's just distinctly different in that flavor profile. And I found a lot of non-gin drinkers didn't like that pine component. So I needed to make something that was going to be, it was going to be approachable to a non-gin drinker, but I also want something that was bold, rich, and would stand up in cocktails. I mean, I like Hendrick's gin, and I really like some London Dries, but they just get lost in cocktails. We experimented with cucumber, and it was just a failure. And I felt I was trying to make the next best Hendrick's, and Hendrick's makes Hendrick's well. So we needed to make something distinctly different as opposed to copying something or mimicking, or we wanted to make something that stood out on its own.
Perfect. Now I'm going to go from you over there to Davin. And hi, Davin.
How are you doing?
We're doing very well. We've been cutting you up and saying lots of horrible things about you while you've been away.
Well, you have every right to do so. I really apologize, Dolph. I had a conflict tonight, and it was set up so long ago that I didn't even remember that I was doing another tasting event tonight. But I'm delighted to be here.
Guy, and we're happy that you're here with us. So it's fantastic you showed up, but we do want some introductions from you, if we could, please, kind sir.
Well, you know what? I have been getting these little notes on my text tonight saying, Steve Lee's awesome. Steely's wonderful. And I mean, I know that's true because I've known Grant since before he ever had a distillery. We met in Toronto 10 or 15 years ago, maybe more. But anyways, I'm Davin de Kergomeaux. I wrote a book about Canadian whiskey that really seems to have done quite well. It went into a second edition. And then Blair and I wrote this book. This book here, The Definitive Guide to Canadian Distilleries. Well, you know, when my first book was launched, Blair and Lena came to the book launch, which was hosted by Pernod Ricard, and I think we had like 160 people there, and they bought the book for everyone. It was a really wonderful event. And he started asking me questions about whiskey and things like this. Actually, I think I'd helped him with a story about lot number 40, because he was writing for Zane Lamprey at the time. Zane Lamprey had some kind of TV show in the States. And anyways, he was writing for Zane Lamprey, and he was asking me about that. And before long, we started writing together, and I'm not sure how it evolved. We started writing together for Whiskey Magazine, and we started out from this adventure series. Okay, have you already told this story, Blair?
A little bit.
Okay. Anyway, we started writing these adventures. We went to Newfoundland and did our best not to get beaten up by the Outlaw biker gang, even though we left the bar forgot to pay for our drinks, and and somebody came chasing after us. And we did all kinds of interesting things. Found ghosts at Zug Island, and all the great adventures. We poured Crown Royal onto the grave of a famous Canadian bootlegger, and did all these wonderful things. Anyways, we were talking one day, and Blair said, we should do something a little bit longer. Why don't we write a book? And it's the funny thing is, he just said it first, because I was thinking the same thing. Because I know a lot about whiskey, but I'm kind of boring. And Blair has this wonderful palate, and he knows all the different spirits, and he can pull things out of it. And he's a really interesting writer. He's amusing, so all the jokes in this book are his. But he also has all kinds of things, because he's from a younger generation than me, obviously. So he's got all things, and like somehow it meshed. And I thought, like writing together with somebody for articles for Whiskey Magazine, that's one thing. But writing a book, there's bound at some point to be conflict. And so far, we haven't reached that point. Either he's extremely good at holding his temper, or we actually work well together. Because I really love the way the book turned out. And you can't tell which pieces, at least I can't tell which pieces I wrote and which pieces Blair wrote, because of course I'd write something and then send it to Blair, and he'd take it and say, yeah, I like a few of the words in there, like the, and put all these changes in. He'd send something to me, and I'd do the same thing, so it would go back to him completely read in markup. But somehow we've managed to synthesize something, and it really, I think it really works well. I know a lot of people shook their heads when I said I was going to work, with a partner on writing this book, and I'm really delighted. Anyways, thanks very much, Blair, for putting up with me. I know I can be kind of.
Now going back to the Drinking Made Easy days, though, it wasn't just Lot 40 that that site, when your book came out, got excited about Canadian whiskey. So I started using you as my little secret weapon to get all the juicy details. So we wrote stories about Crown Royal. We wrote about everything. And I always went to Davin, and we get like about 3 or 4 quotes out of him to incorporate in the story.
I remember we were working together on Whiskey Magazine, and the magazine arrived at my house. I read an article that I can't remember if we'd written it together or if I'd written it myself. And I read through, and we had an interim editor there for a while who used to think that the way you edited a story is you made it fit on the page. And so and Blair loved to set up a joke at the start of the story, but not have the punchline until the end. So he must have been on this one. because we had this thing, this kind of running gag going through it, and then we have, at the end, people are going, hey, that's what they were talking about. The editor just cut the last two sentences right off. And so what we had said sounded really dumb. Stupid, you know? And I said, like, if anybody who I respect reads this, they're going to send a note to Whiskey Magazine and say, you know what? Maybe Davin needs to up his meds, because this is really going nowhere. I had a meltdown in the living room. Janet said, you know, if you keep writing for Whiskey Magazine, you're going to have a stroke. I'd already had one earlier. And so I sent a note to Blair and said, Blair, would you mind taking over as contributing editor, Canadian contributing editor for Whiskey Magazine? If you know, I'm going to have to either find somebody to replace me, or I'm going to have to quit. And I don't want to quit. And he wrote back and said, really? And I said, yes, I this is just not good for my health. And so I sent a note to Rupert.
Why don't you do the job that's making me have a stroke?
Yeah.
I like you a lot, buddy. Do this.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Other than that, and picking up my bar bills, he's just a regular guy. So, anyways, he's taken over and really improved the content of Whiskey Magazine. So it's everything's worked out beautifully. Dolph, you had a question.
Well, I have a couple questions. One, I want to know Blair's side of this, if he agrees with what you're saying. And the second one, when we're done with that, if he has something mean to say to you, I think it's funnier. But I do want to know what your impression was of Douglas when you actually got there. So, because we didn't have that part in the first one. When you walked in, I want to know your impression of the place. So, Blair, do you corroborate? Do you agree with Davin?
Oh yeah, no, we have a blast working together. We just it doesn't feel like work. That's the part that's
good.
Yeah.
So you concur?
Oh yeah, no, it's all cool.
All right, Davin, you show up, Steve Lee's in his orange suit, and you're thinking what?
Well, I'm thinking, how is he ever going to get even one more barrel of whiskey in this warehouse? The place was full, and Steve Lee's up there. He looks like, I don't know, like a cross between an opossum and a monkey, climbing up these barrels, getting up to pull samples out, and he's trying to get samples out, and he's so close to the roof, to the ceiling, and all this, and he's so excited to taste this whiskey and taste this one, that. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. He's got all it looks much more organized now, Steve. Okay.
That's an old photo, yeah.
The barrels are at the back, and then there's the distillery in the middle, and then at the front there's a shop, and it's a wonderful shop. You can see over.
Is this here or no?
Love that bar.
That wasn't there when I was there.
Okay.
And it's really quite an interesting place. Now, he says he's in Oliver.
Yep.
And so I went to Oliver, and I couldn't find him anywhere. And so I can't remember if I texted him or sent him a note. Well, the distillery's like 10 kilometers up the road from Oliver. There's this big campground there, and across the street there's this beautiful new building. It looks like a log cabin or something like that, and that's where the distillery is. And it's just on a little side road that runs. The road that he's on runs exactly parallel to the highway. So it's not like you turn left onto the road or turn right onto the road. The road's beside the road you're on. So anyways, I found him. He helped me find it. I went in there. I was really quite impressed because the place is, you can see that it's been crafted with care and with some plans to be there for a while. I think at one point there were plans to make it into a campground. The campground across the road, but Steve Lee got the property, and it's really quite an interesting operation. He's got the still right at the front of the distillery part, which is right at the back of the shop, or it was at the time. Okay. Oh, there it is right there. Okay, good. And there's the still right there, and so you can really see everything that's going on.
That's neat.
And he's got these this gin, which I really love. This is what I'm drinking. This noteworthy gin, and I don't know. It's just a warm, welcoming place. And he had Jovia with her. His wife Jovia is there, and she's also another warm person. And I mean, you guys were going out. That's right. You guys were going out that evening someplace, and you were talking about that. And you had to get dressed up and whatever. But it was really a very welcoming visit. But of course, we'd been friends for a long time, so I already kind of knew that I would be welcomed there. And,
well, I think one thing, like when initially when we were getting the distillery going, you know, I sent Davin, you know, he's the foremost expert on Canadian whiskey. And my grandfather passed away, and he wasn't much of a drinker. Fortunately for me, I got all this Canadian whiskey, and I told Davin, you know, if he ever came out, we would open one of those bottles, and it was like from the 1950s or 60s. I think it was 56 or 57. Captain's Table.
Captain's Table. It looked like
we opened that up and poured it for the Whiskey Club when Davin came out, and yeah, it was a great experience.
It looks like the bottle looks like a lamp that a genie should come out of.
Really?
Really? Oh yeah, it's just awesome. And this ancient, that's right. We did a tasting up at the golf club, didn't we? The whole club was there. That's where I met Rosalind Buchanan. My goodness, that woman's so impressive. If you want to follow somebody and get wonderful, wonderful wildlife views and vistas of the Okanagan, Rosalind Buchanan. I'm not sure what her Instagram handle is, but I think it's ROSELYN or something like that. Buchanan. Have you heard her there? She's a journalist who works up there. Is this the whole visit was just start to finish fun, FUN, yeah.
Well, gentlemen, we're at the 1 hour point, but I have one last question I want to say I want Davin to introduce it, and Stephen Lee, I want you to finish it off. It's okay. Because it pertains to 40 Creek. So John Hall from 40 Creek, you state how innovative he is. Or Davin, I want to know, why is he considered innovative? Just kind of to set me up with what I'm going to ask Steve Lee in a second.
Well, John came along when really most of the Canadian whiskey that was being produced in Canada was there to fill the pipeline. It was mixing whiskey, you know, for you know, to mix with Coke or soda or something like that. And what John Hall did was he said he bought this little distillery, Reader Distillery, which was going bankrupt, and he came in there to close it out, had a look at it and said, you know what, this could be a good operation if they had proper management. And so instead of closing it, he bought it, and he turned it into this wonderful distillery. But what he said is, I'm going to make my whiskey just a little bit better, a little bit more flavorful than everybody else's for the same price. And he did this, and he created two whiskeys. He created a 3-grain, which, by the way, they're bringing out a special edition of 3-grain this year. And he did Barrel Select, and he went out and he then walked from bar to bar in Texas and Louisiana, which were big Canadian whiskey markets. And he went and sold this whiskey, showed it to people, and that John's Private Cask, my favorite bottling, and he really
bragging. Stop it.
He really brought the focus back to flavorful Canadian whiskey. Now, we've always made flavorful whiskey. Canadian whiskey in the olden days used to be as big as any bourbon you taste now, or as big as any single malt or any rye. But in the 80s, when people stopped buying whiskey, the Scots started making light whiskey, the Americans started making light whiskey, and the Canadians started making light whiskey. And that's all people in Canada could remember. So he really started making big whiskey, selling it for a good price. And he really had America take a second look at Canadian whiskey and say, holy crow, this stuff is really well worth drinking. So what's your question?
So thank you, Davin. So Steve Lee, and this is just to wrap things up, just where you're going. So you stated that you were told by John to respect tradition, but not be bound by that. So what's that mean for you and the distillery? And you have the last word tonight. Well, I'm on the last word. you're wrapping us up, buddy.
So make it quick, is what you're saying?
No, you take. I want to take our time.
I think it's really, those are important words, and we're fortunate as craft distillers, and Blair talked about it. We can be innovative, and as we're coming forward, but I think we really need to respect traditional ways. And one of those things we often say at the distillery here, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and it's really true. And guys like John Hall were giants in our industry, allowing us to do what we need to do. So respecting traditional ways, I take a look at our barrels. We're aging in small barrels, not necessarily traditional, but we're using previously used barrels to make those barrels smaller. So as opposed to new oak. So we're respecting traditional ways by using seasoned wood. But now we got a new world and we're making the barrels smaller. So it's not just a new small barrel. So I think that's a really good example of respecting tradition, but not being bound by it.
Perfect. All right. So, Davin, you haven't been on for very long. We're going to do the last word. Steve Lee, that was a great answer, by the way. I should have continued with that. Because I'm the same way. Respect tradition, but I like people moving beyond it. And not being held by it, but still having some healthy boundary that maybe you don't cross right away, but I can see you kind of crossing things maybe later on as you more experiment. That's one of the things that are fantastic. But we're going to do the last words. We're going to go with Blair, if you could do the last word, and then we're going to go to Davin, and then we're going to talk to our two members on the bottom. Steve Lee will finish it all off with you with the last words. Blair, you're first.
Yeah, no, please. Now that local bookstores are opening up again, why not? Yeah, buy the book. And I sound shameless, but why not?
No, good value.
We're here for you. It's good value. It's pretty. Lots of good pictures in there too, and information. So we could do something very much like Steve Lee's already planned for some people at the South Okanagan Trail. So this is like it's like these work in tandem. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah,
Davin,
and buy Steve Lee spirits so you can drink them while reading the book. There you go.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead there, Davin.
I had to show the suit.
Yeah, thanks, Don.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for doing this, Dolph. I really appreciate being your guest. I appreciate you doing the book club, and I appreciate you promoting our book. We put a lot of work into it.
Yeah.
COVID has killed the launch, and we're very grateful. And Grant, Steve Lee, you've been a good friend for a long time, and I'm glad that your distillery has ended up making spirits that I really love. Tonight, I'm enjoying your Negroni, and I'm enjoying your noteworthy gin. When we sign off, I'll add some tonic. Farewell.
Thank you, Davin. You're a pleasure to have on, buddy. I'll have you on anytime. Anytime. These are the ones. Don, last words, buddy.
No, this has always been fantastic. I'm glad I got to take a part in the Dubh Glas Distillery for the book. Steve Lee, was fantastic meeting you. Blair, it was fantastic meeting you for my first time. Davin, great seeing you. Even though it's at the end, but still, always a pleasure seeing you. Drew, same. Dolph.
Yep.
Dolph.
Thank you, Don. And I know I've been drinking it all night, but some of this will still come your way.
I cannot wait.
Drew, you're up.
Thank you all for having me on again. Steve Lee, it was lovely meeting you. Look forward to some time where we can actually meet in person. And it's been a fun night.
Excellent. Well, last word, Steve Lee. You get to close this up.
Well, I've been. That is a great whiskey. I didn't. That's the Smoke Points from Shelter Point again. I just had my first sip. I'm done my Negroni. Well, thanks for inviting me on. I'm very appreciative. I'm excited that I got invited to be here, and after Gordon, Merriam, and Jacob and Leon. Drew, fantastic questions. I was really impressed with the research that was done and the questions by Drew and Don as well. And thanks for showing my orange suit there. Appreciate it. Davin, you've been a fantastic friend and a supporter of the Canadian whiskey industry and now the craft distilling industry, which is amazing. It's helping our industry grow. Blair, thanks for being a judge at the Canadian Artisan Spirit Competition. Alex said some positive words. I don't know if you've ever talked about it in the previous episodes, but Alex chooses the people for his judging. He is very particular on who he uses. So thank you for judging that competition. And that really lends itself well, I think, to the book and having the knowledge of not just the Canadian distilleries, but the Canadian spirits as well. So thank you for judging for that. Dolph, thanks for putting all this together and giving some exposure to our small industry that's growing. So it's really appreciated. The questions are amazing. I cannot believe it, how well researched, and some of those photos. I am very, very impressed.
Oh, we're here for you.
What you did and what you've got together for this, and getting these superstars all together, the Brady Bunch, the three orange guys.
All of them. They're fantastic.
You know, I have to say, Blair, you look very sharp and orange. You probably should wear that more often as
A
well.
little bit. I agree with it. It's your cover top.
I'll see what happens.
Steve Lee, it was an absolute pleasure. And I, you know what? I really look forward to this night all week. I know I prepare a little bit. You look at the questions and try to figure it out. But there's very few things I would rather be doing than spending my time with you, ladies and gentlemen, the people in the audience, people writing in, and you at this point in time. So thank you to everybody out there. It's been a memorable episode, one that I and everyone else here, I'm sure, enjoyed. So let's hold up a glass. Here's the good company. Here's the good whiskey and my way gone cocktail. Here's the good books. Oh, my wife's got one for me. Good cocktails. I'm not sure which one that is. Here's the good books, good conversation. And here is to see you all next week, Saturday, July 4th, for our Whisky Book Club Canadian Whiskey Journey 2 Brewers Edition, which should be really, really, really fun. So I thank you all. This has been a fantastic night. I got to say, I couldn't have had more fun. So cheers to every one of you. And the words of Don, Dr. Don, cheers, eh? Cheers, eh?
Cheers, eh?
Cheers, guys. Thank you.